Hi. So it's been about a week, and I just wanted to take a moment and share with you a little bit about Stephen Covey's concept of win win or no deal. I know those of you that have done the program know that win win is one of the fundamental principles that you learn in the gift. And I've had a couple situations come up, both with clients and personally, where the question of what happens when it feels like a win win isn't possible. So many people believe that in the concept of win-win, so they have an understanding of it, they have a belief in it, they're even open to the value in it, but they struggle with what happens when it looks like a win-win isn't possible. So of course, there's a number of scenarios in life and in relationships. There's the win-lose scenario, which means conceptually, I win, you lose. It seems to be one that has been really embraced by some of our collective consciousness and conditioning in the form of capitalistic culture. Lots of times there's the idea of, for there to be a winner, there has to be a loser. And given the choice, probably not going to want to choose option number two, which is I lose and you win. So we certainly have people that are very type A in their personalities, which can drive them towards the temperament of I'm at all costs will do everything I can to make sure that I don't lose. There are people in their lives that have belief systems that are protective, and I need to always sort of, you've heard the adage of, you got to look out for number one. And so that can either create that. So that means I need to win, or the flip of that, which is I'll do everything I can not to lose. There are some people that also live in the scenario of simply I win, which is there really is no concept of you, and that I go after whatever it is that I want and I desire without necessarily stopping to think about what the other person wants, and that I'm interested in getting the outcome and the result, and that's it. I don't look beyond that. I don't consider the impact that that might have on other people. And then, of course, there is the lose-lose scenario, which often is an extension of what happens when the battle for those other situations or other scenarios kick in. And so that's when everything just kind of falls apart, and that both people have given up on any possible win-win, and that there's the giving over, giving up versus accepting the possibility that a win-win, the no deal possibility is there, in that, in fact, it's more of nobody feels good about it. Everybody feels terrible about it, in fact. So then there, of course, is the win-win concept. And there's two variations on Stephen Covey in his work, gives variants on both I win, you win, or the concept of I win and you win, or no deal. So I win, you win, sometimes for people shows up as compromise in life and in relationship. And that if we're in the must win category, then we'll sometimes give stuff up just to get to that idea of a win is possible. This can often lead down the road to people feeling resentful because they realize that they did give up. It can start to feel like martyrdom if it feels like I gave up more than the other person gave up, or I feel like I felt manipulated in giving over whatever it was that was important to me. And so that really isn't a version of win-win. So true win-win is I win and you win, or no deal. And so that means that sometimes people need to really work hard on developing an environment that's conducive to the concept of win-win. And some of that is, who are you being, or what are you bringing to the table when the win-win conversation starts? And so if you're interested in having a better experience, or possibly a better experience of the win-win idea, is think about bringing basically three fundamental character traits to any conversation with win-win in mind. And the first one is integrity. And so what integrity does is it takes out duplicity. So it allows you to know without a doubt what actually would constitute a win. And so you need to understand what it is that you really want and what you need. You may also need to do some inventory on what's propelling you towards it, because there's always the occasions where we take a position and we posture, not because it really matters, but because we don't want to be wrong, or more importantly, we have a need to want to be right. So it's about really knowing before you go in, be in integrity with what it is that you're really going after, and why. Why is it that you're in pursuit of that? Inventory, self discovery, asking yourself the question of what's motivating me and how important is it. So step into that space of recognizing and understanding that first. And then the second thing is have some maturity when it comes to attempting to understand the other person's perspective and the other person's point of view. Be willing to listen when we posture, when we get in the position of, I need to be right about something, then oftentimes it doesn't matter what anybody else says. And, or if you happen to be conflict avoidant, I know that that shows up a lot for people, is that there's a lack of capacity, willingness to want to understand that it doesn't, a negotiation for a win-win doesn't have to mean that conflict is ensured or conflict is guaranteed. When both people are bringing an open heart and an open mind and a true desire to find that win-win, that heart-centered space of I'm willing to sit here and, even if it's uncomfortable, do whatever needs to be done to get to that ultimate goal. And come at the conversation with an abundance mindset. And so what I mean by that is, we often feel like in compromise is that it's because that somebody has to give something up. And so if we think of giving up something, we're in scarcity. And abundance is not just about money. Abundance is that core belief that there's enough, and there's enough both internally and externally to be able to create a situation or a scenario that will support everybody feeling richer, better, happier, more positive, having had the experience. Now, that being said, what happens when you get to the place where you're up against perhaps conflicting values, where people's paradigms will not allow for, even if they understand it and they've listened, it doesn't allow for a point of view on the other person's perspective, an unwillingness to give up that value, knowing that if you were to say yes to something that was out of integrity and alignment with your values, is that you have not truly played a game of win-win. So when you're up against that, sometimes then you're in the no deal. And no deal can feel sometimes a lot like a lose-lose. And it gets you to the place where it feels scary and makes you unhappy. And in some situations, particularly in relationships, and you meet that often enough, is it calls into question, are we really compatible? And are we ever going to be able to navigate things in our life when we're up against stuff like this, knowing that we have pretty significant value differences? Now, when do you make that decision? I think that you make that decision when you both agree that you have truly done everything that you can to come to some sort of agreement. And no deal does not necessarily mean that you end your relationship or partnership or whatever it is. It just may mean that you walk away from whatever it is, and that you allow yourself to hold your integrity in terms of, I stood for what was important. And unless it's something that is very significant and that will affect you directly by walking away, then you're in that spot of making those hard decisions. So win-win is the ideal. Win-win is the goal. Win-win is where everyone walks away feeling heard, feeling understood, feeling respected, feeling like they have whatever it is that they want and or need from that scenario. And the alternative to that, of course, is always no deal. Or you can continue to play win-lose or lose-lose in your life, because it certainly is fundamentally grounded in our culture. And most people, given the choice, would prefer win-lose. Not my favorite, and certainly not how I do my best to live my life. So thank you for listening. Hope that makes a difference. Make sure that if you haven't subscribed to the channel, that you do, so that you know when posts are coming. Any comments, always happy to hear from you. Any perspectives and your ability to weigh in, would really love to hear from you. Thank you, and enjoy the little light bits of snow that are falling. See you soon.